It's been a while since I've been home. So much has changed since I was young. I bring my family out here today, and I tell them stories of their nanisku, my dad. And there's been joy mingled with pain, but all of it has formed who I am today. Wow, he's still missing too. What do you have there, Sarita?
Just like I have one for all the crabs.
There's a story in the Bible that reminds me of the journey of our indigenous peoples. It's the Exodus story of the Israelite people being freed from slavery. They were enslaved by the nation of Egypt, which ironically had been rescued only a couple generations before by an Israelite, a man named Joseph. Joseph was informed by his God through an interpretation of a dream that a famine was coming. Then, Joseph was hired to prepare their nation not only to survive the years of famine, but to grow into an even wealthier world power through the years of famine. But after a time, the gratitude to Joseph, his people, and the God they served vanished. Instead, they were seen as a burden and a threat to the nation of Egypt. The spirit of greed, pride, self-righteousness, and indifference grew in the heart of the Egyptians toward the Israelites, which led to their enslavement, oppression, and the breakdown of their traditional ways. Eventually, God sent a man named Moses, born an Israelite but raised an Egyptian, who is stirred to anger when he sees the mistreatment of his fellow Israelites. Initially, he attempts to fight it, but soon sees the ineffectiveness of that approach. So after a period of healing in his desert sanctuary, away from home and getting to know his God, he returns with his God to lead his people on their journey home.
I say to myself, when I was going to church, it reminded me of when we were in the church-run residential school, the government-run residential school. And we said to ourselves, you cannot be Indian. It was almost what you might say in English. You can't be Indian. You can't be yourself, in other words. Mm-hmm. What? Mm-hmm. You mean I can't be who I was meant to be? God, the Creator, meant us to be who He put on earth to be. He put us on this earth to be who we were. In other words, Aboriginal. The Lord said to us, we were born in His image. Mm-hmm. And I like that, because born in His image means we were somebody. What was it like for the people who first came to residential school and only knew how to speak the language, their own Aboriginal language? What happened when they spoke that language? They got punished. They got slapped. They got punished for speaking the only language they knew how to speak.
Our father always said the Bible teachings are the same as our teaching. The biblical teachings are the same as ours. That's what he said his grandmother told him. And the other thing that you hear from our old elders, even before Christianity came here, they referred to the man called Jesus. They referred to it. And you'll hear Chief Louis talking about it. Chief Louis never went to church. So that's what I always struggle with. Why did the colonists come here saying we were heathens when in fact we weren't? We were probably more Christian practicing than they were.
I grew up hearing painful stories from my dad's childhood experiences and witnessing the perpetual racism he endured in his adult years. As the eldest sibling at the Port Alberni Indian Residential School, he took the harshest abuses as a protector of his siblings. In his adult years, he loved reading books and was a very intelligent, skilled man. However, the addictions that consumed him as a means of forgetting the torture he endured as a child in residential school eventually overcame him. I've wrestled over the years with the ripple effects of colonial trauma committed in the name of the Christian God against my father and millions of other indigenous people across North America. Through genocidal acts of forced land relocation, government-funded church-run residential schools, detainments on reserve, reproductive sterilization, and the 60 scoop, I've experienced all too often the reality of not being accepted as a full human being and being trapped in stereotypes, regardless of my level of formal education, healthy lifestyle, and a successful track record. Despite these setbacks and struggles, I've chosen to surrender my frustration and pain to the one who made me as I am, who made all Indigenous people as they are, in His image. As I've gotten to know my Creator God through my healing journey, I've become aware that He's got an enemy much worse than the nations that have enslaved and oppressed my people. That enemy, which we call Satan, once lived in God's house and worked for His kingdom. But Satan defected and went about colonizing God's creation. He's colonized planet Earth. He's colonized the story of creation. He's colonized the wellness of human beings. He's colonized the economy and even colonized Christianity, and he is always at work to colonize our mind, body, our spirit, and our relationship to nature and others, if we let him. Fortunately, though, our God created a sanctuary where we can heal and decolonize our mind, our body, our spirit, and our relationships. That sanctuary is our friendship with Him, which is both a sacred place and a healing journey. My wife and I gave our daughters each names that together explain this concept in my language, the Nuu-chah-nulth language. One is Tashi, which means the pathway. This is the path of choosing good and healthy choices for wholeness in life. The other name is Hasha, which means for keeping. This is the idea that we hold something with honor, care for it, and cherish it so we can pass it on to the next generation. Together, Tashi Hasha means the pathway for keeping, which is not only a place for each of us to walk and to dwell, but to cherish enough to share with others. We think of it as the journey home. My family has embarked on this journey together over the past 21 years. We've taken steps to decolonize our mind, our body, our spirit, and relationship to nature and to others through our growing relationship with our Creator God. In this way, we can thrive as Indigenous people.
In this video program, our family and friends will share with you how we experience sanctuary on the pathway for keeping as we decolonize our full human experience of mind, healing from the generational impact of trauma, addictions, and lifestyle imbalance. Body, reviving physical wellness into daily living progressively. Spirit, growing in a restorative and developmental relationship with our triune Creator God. And social environmental relationships, living in harmonious relationship with nature and others in God's kingdom. Please join us on the journey home.
My community, with the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, we have ceremonies throughout the year, and those are to celebrate the foods as they come out seasonally. We have those first food ceremonies that really bring together and help youth and multi-generations come together to celebrate in a way that protects them. It creates a safe space, and it also is a safe space for our culture.
Yes, so in my culture too, so like the Dawa, Mexica, Aztec culture, there's many celebrations that occur throughout somebody's lifespan, whether it's, the birth of a child or coming of age, or even the many stages that an individual may go through based on their religious beliefs. And with that, that support is continuous, and it's fortified by having extended family members, community members, and any individuals that are within the family circle by having the full concept of sanctuary being defined through family and community.
And I think to add on to that too, just going back to, for example, like first food ceremonies or the seasonality of food in our culture too, is that when you're learning from the time that you're a little one through the time that you become an elder yourself, that there are people within those spaces who are constantly teaching you. They're constantly reaching out to you to teach you. And then you become the teacher. And so it's this space of continual nourishment, whether you're receiving that nourishment or maybe as you get older or learn more, you're also nourishing others. So there's that constant give and take, sort of this iterative process that you learn throughout your lifetime. And all of that is really centered around the spiritual connection to one another, but more importantly to our Creator and the way that our Creator provides for us in those different spaces. And I think one of those sports that I really have seen at one of our children really connect and want to have a deeper understanding of is lacrosse. And I think it's really important because he understands that connection to the indigenous roots of that sport, and to know that this game was brought forth in a healing way. It's called the healing game for a reason, because it brought the origins of the tribes who began this sport, brought it forward in a way to heal amongst their own community, but also with other communities that they played that game with at the time.
My great-grandfather, Wilson Cornelius, was a Bear Clan man. There is a legend in our nation that there was a man who came to a woman's, he was sickly, and he went from longhouse to longhouse. In my mom's nation, there's bear, a wolf, and a turtle, and I'm wolf, as you can see. And they came to the Wolf Clan, and he said, "I'm very ill. Can you help me to get better?" And they said, "Oh, no, we can't do that. We have other things happening now." And he went to the Turtle Clan, the same thing. But when he went to the Bear Clan, the lady who was kind of in charge of that place took him in, and he said to her, "This is what I'm feeling, and I need you to go and collect me some herbs from the woods and bring them back. They'll help me." So she went out and she brought it back, and she gave him what he needed, and he was better. And then they woke up the next morning, and he had a different illness. And he said, "Oh, these are my symptoms. This time I have a headache. I have, eye problems, and this is what you need to bring me from the woods." So she'd go out and bring him that from the woods. This happened day after day after day after day, and every day he had a new problem, and he would tell her how she could heal the problem, using the gifts that the Creator gave us on Mother Earth. And so she learned all the medicines that we need to be healthy, to heal once we're sick, actually. This wasn't prevention, this was a cure. And so she taught that to her people, and from then on, all the Bear Clan people carried the medicines. So my great-grandfather, down on the Onondaga Res, which we spent a lot of time living on, he had a little hut. He passed away before I was born, so I never got to see the hut or him, but people tell me a lot of stories, and they had a little shack, and in the shack he had all these brown paper bags filled with different types of herbs, and he had them written on what it was. And anytime anyone was sick on the res, they would come to see him, and he would go back there, and he would go through his bag, the different bags that he had, and he'd collect whatever he thought they needed to take home as a tea or a poultice or whatever, and he'd tell them what to do. And I love that story because it just lets us know what kind of creator we have too, that he would provide these healing things for us. And it's just beautiful and powerful. And you know, one of the things I really appreciate is that I'm able to work at a health food store, and I also have registered nurses training from way back. And so, you know, it means a lot to me to see people get better. The Creator's gracious enough to help us, to restore us to his image. We're made in the image of God. You know, he wants us to be healthy. And so he provides these things so we can be restored to him. And we can start fresh. We can start over and start our journey to healing.
I grew up on the reservation, so I know what res life is like, and I cherish the memories from it through the years that I was on the reservation. As you look around our house, you see toys everywhere. Outside looks like a junkyard with all their toys and their trucks and their toys that they ride around, their bikes. But we love it, and they love it. I'm not the best parent or grandparent in the world. Nobody's perfect, I learned. If you're striving for perfection, give it up. Just be yourself and let the Lord help you. One of the things that has been a thrill to me is that I learned from someone, a wise man, that to raise perfect kids, you just better forget it, because there's no man wise enough to have all the answers. But there's a couple principles that I have found, and others that I've talked to have found, really make a difference when it comes to working with your kids. We have 4 successful kids now. They've all married well. We have 9 grandchildren. And that first principle is learning to communicate. Learning to be on the same frequency as they are, and showing them that we are genuinely interested in what they're interested in. You know, people say, how do you become such a good grandparent? It's simply sitting back, keeping your mouth shut, and listening to see right where they're at. I learned that communication is so important. It isn't giving advice, but being loving and being caring. It's an attitude. It's a principle that you get across. You know, when I pick them up, or they love to jump into my arms or want to jump up and give me a big hug, when I let them down gently. They always know that there's something gentle about Grandpa. And you know, they get the idea. You don't have to tell them that this is the way God is, but they quickly get the idea that that must be what God is like too. And I think of what the children of Israel learned in the sanctuary, the altar of prayer, taking everything to God in prayer. If I can give that heritage to my grandkids and to my children, I will die a happy man.
Well, I think one of the biggest ways our family has seen the sanctuary that God provides is the way that nature interacts with itself. We've always seen that nature ministers to itself. There's nothing in nature, there's nothing that is created here on earth that doesn't minister to something else. Whether it's the relationships with the birds and the trees, even wildlife and the plants around it. You know, one of the big things here at Big Lake Youth Camp is that it is covered in bear grass, and this is what bear grass is. It has been used as material for weaving. It has been used for medicinal teas, and it has been used by nature to feed bears. It's one of the first plants that starts growing again after winter, and it's one of the first ones to start growing after a fire as well. So it's just amazing that when we see how much God watches out for us and takes care of us and provides for us on a daily basis. And I think that's one of the things about indigenous cultures, is that we lived in harmony with that. You know, we looked for the herbs, we looked for the medicinal items, we looked for what was edible, medicinal, and poisonous within our environment. And that allowed us to see God, because someone put it there for us. Someone was thinking about us when it was created. One of the things that really shows me God's sanctuary when it comes to our relationship with nature is it is forever growing and it's forever healing. You know, one of the big things is, even as you look around here, some of these trees are scarred by fire. Some of these trees are windblown and have fallen over. And nature, just because something bad has happened, nature isn't done with them. God isn't done with them. You know, a tree that has fallen, like the log we're sitting on, it produces spores. It becomes a breeding ground for insects, for life, for mushrooms, for other plants, and for the tree itself to grow back. You know, the moss that covers the trees, it just, there's nothing that could happen to this forest that can't be brought back. It was devastated by fire. It was brought to nothing. And look at us now. We're sitting under the shade of one of the same trees. We smell the punkiness of the fertile earth. And these are all things that show us that that's the same thing as our relationship with God. We can never do anything that will cause him not to have a plan for us, not to have something for us to do, not a way to bring us back. And as we find that, and we find out that God created this, it's the second gospel, that this is what he meant for us to have. And when you look at indigenous cultures, they had that relationship with nature. And as technology has grown and everything else, we've kind of pulled away from that. So one of the things is, as we're teaching our young, is to rebuild that relationship, because it does teach you about everything else.
When I think about the sanctuary, you think about like an oasis, a quiet place where you can go and rest and relax, and you have this respite. There's a song that I grew up singing and listening to, talking about a secret place where I can go and hide away and talk to the Creator all day long. And there's just this peace that you get when you find a nice, tranquil place in nature to just listen to all of creation, but also to be able to talk to him and have no distractions. And when you're in a quiet place like nature, like how we are now, things have kind of calmed down. My brain is no longer getting distracted by all the extra noise, and I'm at peace. And there's something very satisfying and calming about that.
We hope that the experiences of our family and friends have given you a more full understanding of how you too can experience sanctuary in your Creator.
There's a part of the Exodus story that I love. After Moses had led the Israelites out of Egypt, God calls them up to the mountain to receive the written covenant between Creator God and his people that he had just spoken to them. While Moses is on the mountain with God, the people are in the valley, forgetting and breaking their covenant vows already. When Moses returns and discovers what they've done, he breaks the stone tablets which God had written their vows upon, and then returns to the mountain to ask God to forgive them. With an abundance of mercy and love, God tells Moses, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." Moments later, God reveals what his presence is all about. He passes by Moses and proclaims his name, to be compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, both merciful and just. That name, which is God's character, his presence, is his sanctuary for our journey as well.
Over the next several episodes in this series, we will develop a deeper understanding of how to decolonize our mind, our body, and spirit, and relationship to nature and others through our sanctuary experience. Each episode will unpack an element of God's sanctuary to understand what it teaches us about holistic living in Him.
Moses sung a song for the people when they crossed the Red Sea, and I claim this promise from Exodus 15:17 for our indigenous people on the journey home. You will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance, the place, O Lord, you made your dwelling, the sanctuary, O Lord, your hands established.
You will plant them on your mountain, the place you've made your home, the sanctuary you have built where you reign forevermore.